Our next presentations, our next two actually, are going to be on traffic calming and some of the effects that are not inherently obvious. First up will be former Deputy Fire Chief on the City of Austin, Les Bunte. He is author of a nationally recognized report, Traffic Calming Programs and Emergency Response, a competition of two public goods. In his report, he compares the risk to resident survival from the benefits and safety benefits of the devices. And he will be presenting the report of his results of his study. He is currently serving as Director of Emergency Services Institute at Texas A&M, delivering firefighting and rescue training to over 50,000 emergency services personnel each year throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank everyone for allowing me to be here today. Obviously, I will tell you I am not a transportation planner. I'm an emergency service responder by trade, so I will do my best to speak some of the language, hopefully in the same degree here that we can understand. But I became involved through the City of Austin. Basically, Austin started the speed hump program back in '94, and there was a tremendous demand for that with over 600 streets requested the first year. It escalated to over 1,400 a year later, and obviously the fire department was alarmed with the proliferation of those, and worked with public works and transportation, and had some of those, if you will, denied because it impacted the response routes that we were using quite a bit. The problem with that was that Public Works was unfortunately turned around and telling citizens you can't get your speed hump on your street because the fire department won't let you have one. And so the city manager obviously became found himself in a lot of consternation over that in order that we do a study on response times, of which in 1997, after that study, the program was actually suspended until a citizen focus group was formed to figure how to approach traffic calming projects in Austin. And as a result of that, it was re-implemented in about 1998. One of the things that was of concern to fire and EMS was that they no longer had the ability to deny any of the installations that may occur. Next slide, please. You can roll through these also. Predominantly, about the same time, I was needed to conduct a professional policy report for my degree work at the University of Texas, and needed to incorporate qualitative and quantitative analysis. So, armed with some of the literature I'd already received from traffic calming projects and research done by Kathleen Cologne and Ray Bowman, along with other fire departments across the United States, I was able to go ahead and analyze the impacts of these devices upon emergency responses agencies in Austin. So I want to make it clear that this was actually a research project done with the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas and not an official City of Austin study. All of us want safe neighborhoods, there's no doubt about that, with low crimes, and we want to have very safe neighborhoods with reduced traffic speeds and so forth. And traffic calming devices do allow that to take place for us, or generally helps, or attempts to help to do that. Next slide, please. The second public good is that citizens also want very effective and efficient emergency services. We spend an enormous amount of our tax dollars every year on public safety, and the response times are directly related to the efficiency and the effectiveness of those particular agencies. So most of the performance measures are impacted by response times. So that's the public good number two. Of course, the dilemma is that when you install devices to slow down traffic, generally you're going to slow down the response times as well, and as a result, you have a competition of two public goods, and that was the basis of what we wanted to look at. Next, please. Of course, compounding that, and most everybody in this audience knows it as well, that the citizens want their cake and eat it too. They want good response times, they want low crime rates, they want good transportation systems, but not on my street. And a lot of them want quiet neighborhoods, but generally not willing to trade one for the other. They want it all. So that's our jobs as public policy makers to try to provide that. So my purpose today is to share this research with you, give you some background so that you may be able to take some of this methodology back to your particular entities and use that and not reinvent the wheel, and allow you to use policy with good qualitative analysis. Looking at emergency services issues, when we did the study, we compared the test to various cities that had already conducted some testing in regards to traffic calming, namely Portland, Montgomery County, Maryland, Berkeley, and Boulder, along with Austin. And most of those had been done within an 18-month period. What we found in reviewing of all those different tests done by those different departments was that there was generally a 2 to 10 second delay per calming device, depending on the type of vehicle. If you had an engine, which is a smaller type of fire truck, it would generally take 2 to 5 seconds to traverse over that device. If you had a ladder company, it would take generally somewhere around 4 to 7 seconds. If you were dealing with an EMS unit transporting a critically ill patient, it could take upwards to 10 seconds for them to traverse their device. What we also found was the police was basically unaffected or not affected at all by the traffic calming devices. They would just run over them. That's just the best way to put it. What we also found during our study was that there were numerous incidents of firefighters and paramedics having injury on the jobs due to traffic calming. Montgomery County was one where they actually had a firefighter disabled as a result of neck and back injury. Sacramento, California also had several injuries that they reported. Again, predominantly firefighters striking their heads on roofs, even though seat belts were being worn. Fresno, California also had documentation of 4 different injuries. Again, these are just simply injuries that occur as they're traversing over these humps. So a lot of those occur at night too when they were undetected. Fleet damage, we found evidence from numerous departments that there were a lot of fleet damage reports from erratic weight shifts. Again, Fresno, Berkeley, California also reported they had quite a bit, as did Sacramento. We'll kind of move through these rather fast. Austin, San Diego, and Louisville, Colorado also reported a number of the water tanks that carry the water actually ruptured as they crossed some of the calming devices. I'm just going to kind of move through this, but we also found that the air quality issues also was somewhat impacted in that with the excessive increase in acceleration and decrease in acceleration over each hump through several European studies showed that it did contribute to air quality issues or emissions. And of course, with Austin being in a non-attainment area, and we heard the Senator talk about that this morning, that of course is a concern that many of us have to face. Civil liabilities, we looked at those issues, particularly with ADA, that roadways are included in the definition of facilities and alterations must comply with ADA performances. So there were some concerns with those from a liability standpoint. Next, please. One of the issues that we had from a civil liability standpoint was 85th percentile speed studies. When we requested Public Works to give us a study on that, they didn't really want to do that, because most of the time they would find that because of the 85th percentile rule, they found that speeds actually needed to increase in neighborhoods based on the 85th percentile. So that was a problem that we had to encounter in trying to ensure that we had good quantitative analysis on whether or not humps needed to be installed or not. So looking at Austin pedestrian safety, we knew we had good data on that for a 3-year period. In Austin, we averaged about 15.3 fatalities per year, but there was a major surprise finding here. No more than 1 fatality occurred on neighborhood streets, and that's of course where all the calming devices were being installed at. There was actually only 2 that occurred in that 3-year period, one in 1997 and one in 1998, and no pedestrian fatalities in neighborhood streets in 99. Virtually all of these, of course, were on major thoroughway or freeways, thoroughfares, places where you would not have traffic calming. We had another find that out of the 46 fatalities for that 3-year period, only 5 involved failure to control speed. So it's a very small portion indicating that speed was not necessarily a problem with that. None of those 5 occurred in neighborhood streets, and the primary factor for all the most of the causes was pedestrian failure to yield right-of-way, and the factor was cited for those actual 2 fatalities that did occur in neighborhood streets. It was cited as pedestrian failure to yield right-of-way. So we also knew we had good response times for fire and EMS. We had good survival rate data on sudden cardiac arrest. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but the American Heart Association has established certain survival rate probabilities based on the time that intervention begins on a patient. And we had that information. We also had collected a lot of good positive data in that regards in Austin. So we were able then to compare the sudden cardiac arrest data with that of the pedestrian fatality data, and along with our response times. It's important that I go over this with you so that you really fully understand that your survivability of sudden cardiac arrest is on the left side here. Along the bottom, this is the response time, 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes. So if you will see that if intervention is began within 1 minute, you have about a 92% chance of surviving sudden cardiac arrest. After 2 minutes, that drops down to about 86%. 3 minutes, it's down to about 78%. When you get down to about 4 minutes, you see it's about 60% survival rate, and a big drop between 4 and 5 minutes. So the survival rate probability is very much tied and correlated to your response time and how soon intervention can begin. So we were able to put some of these within the probability model developed by Ray Bowman out of Colorado. And the thing about this model that I encourage other people to use is that it calculates the positive gains of lives that can be saved when response times are reduced. And at the same time, it can also do the negative. It can conversely give you the loss of lives when response times are increased. And you can generally plug in the model different time variations or even the amount of probability increases based on the number of traffic calming devices one may have to traverse. So real quickly, your department and your entities at home can actually use this model if you have these 4 different elements, and we'll be glad to provide all that to you. But basically, most of your departments should have this information and can allow you to do quantitative analysis. And really, that's what I'm asking for today is, next bullet please, is that we need more studies to be done by fire departments of this nature. Okay, now I know this is a real busy slide, and I know you'll have it memorized by lunchtime, but what this is it puts all the probabilities together, and really what I want to focus on is right here is your number of minutes. This is the number of calls or percentage of calls that were actually responded to in these minutes right here. This is the probability factor, and basically you use mathematic calculations to determine what new probabilities are based on whether you had an increase or a decrease in response times. So this is a real busy slide, but what I really want to concentrate on, back to the slide please. In '98 we had 442 sudden cardiac arrest cases. Out of that, the model suggested that based on our response times, based on the probability of the American Heart Association, we would save somewhere around 215 lives. The actual number in Austin for 1998 was 235 lives. So we know the probability model here, or the model, is really fairly close to being what we considered accurate. In fact, it may be somewhat conservative. But the point being is, what we showed was if we had a 30% increase in, or I'm sorry, a 30-second increase in response time, we would lose an additional 37 people a year that we were currently not saving because we were getting there 30 seconds later. Does everybody follow me on that? Okay. And the same thing is, on the conversely, if you went into this number where it's a positive 41, if you improve your response time by using opticoms and other types of things that can increase or improve your response time, if we improved that by 30 seconds, we would actually save an additional 41 people that we currently weren't saving. So the model works very well in being able to predict what your losses or gains could potentially be. Next slide, please. This is really just a summary of the first one that we showed. In this case, the 30-second increase in response time. We, instead of saving 215, we would now save 177, so you would have a net loss of 37. This one shows where there's actually 3 devices were transversed over using approximately 5 seconds per device, so a 15-second increase in response time generally would result in, I believe it's 19 less lives saved. Next, please. And then this one I talked about a while ago, this is where it would actually show that you actually increase your efficiency if you were to improve response time by 30 seconds. Okay, next please. So basically the model told us that with a 30-second increase, 37 additional lives would be lost to sudden cardiac arrest. With a 15-second increase, 19 additional lives would be lost. Conversely, if we improve response times, then we would have an increase of 40 lives. So when you put that into a risk-benefit ratio, and you look at your different policies, and you have installation of calming devices, and your projected risk is losing 37 people to possibly save 1, that's a 37-to-1 ratio, you have to ask yourself, is that wise public policy? And then the other is the use of opticoms, as I talked about a while ago. If you invested in opticoms, you potentially may not save a pedestrian life, but you could save 41 more potentially using this model. Next, please.
Can you tell us what an opticom is?
I'm sorry, opticoms are those that control the traffic signals as the fire apparatus or EMS unit starts arriving towards an intersection. It gives them the right of way. It doesn't require them to slow down and stop, and I apologize for that. So basically there was 18 different recommendations. I'm not going to go over all these obviously, but one of them is avoid conflict prior to the program adoption. That's a big, big thing to do. Mesa, Arizona has a really good impact statement with that you may want to look at. Verify that a legitimate problem exists, not a perceived one. Again, looking at whether or not your pedestrian accidents are really occurring on neighborhood streets or not. Next. And then you need to evaluate all the impacts to emergency response, or all the impacts, not just emergency response, but air quality, legal risk, maintenance, all those different things. Next. Of course, to eliminate the root causes, try not to treat symptoms, allow emergency services the authority to reject installations. That's very important because there are a lot of primary response routes that departments have to use every day, and you certainly don't want to put those on those particular primary response routes. One of the others is to balance your program with additions of electronic control systems that I talked about, showed the benefits of that. I mean, to me, that's a good trade-off. If we're going to do some traffic calming, we need to do some things on improving the opticom side. Okay. And of course, with public hearings, a lot of public involvement. Make sure that the bottom line of my presentation this morning is that our public policy is based more so on fact and not as much on emotion, using good quantitative analysis to try to arrive at good policy making. And I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. By the way, the 85th percentile, that refers to the Institute for Transportation Engineers, which for many years has recommended that speed limits be set in the 85th percentile of the free flow traffic. In other words, see the speeds that the vehicles are actually going, set the speed limit where 15% are going faster, 85% are going at that speed or slower. And while you're there, you might also want to check out their portion on how to set yellow lights, particularly if someone in your jurisdiction is proposing red light cameras. Depending, of course, on whether they're doing that as a traffic safety measure or as a municipal revenue matter.